Hello, everyone, and welcome on into OneSoccer Today here on OneSoccer.ca. Andi Petrillo, Oliver Platt, Gareth Wheeler with you. And joining us, our special friend, we love him, is Kristian Jack, also an expert on the Canadian Premier League. And that's what we're going to start the show off with, because we are at the quarter point of the CPL season, my friend. I have some questions about these standings. We're going to dive into them shortly. But first, I always like the big picture thought, right? So after the first quarter of the season, KJ, what would you say are your biggest takeaways so far of the fifth season of the CPL?
Well, I have a lot. I don't want to steal the takeaways of the other gentlemen, so I'll see what I can do. I'm not.
Yeah. Go for it.
I think obviously the fact that parity reigns supreme is obviously the major one when you look at the outcomes and the results. But why is that? I think my biggest takeaway from it is I actually think the reward of a trophy at the end of the regular season is making a direct impact on the consequences of the outcomes on the pitch. I think that you can see teams now, really staying in the game from whistle to whistle. I think in the past, we all know in this game, when you get a lead in any league, in any country in the world, it's very difficult usually to come back from that. Goals are really important and taking obviously advantage of that and getting those leads. What we've seen so far this season already is I think 15 opportunities where a lead has been relinquished. And that's just an enormous percentage when you think through 29 games, comparable to the last few seasons. These teams are really battling. They're playing hard. Obviously, the talent is very similar. But what we're seeing now is the leads are not held by these teams. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that teams know that points matter. The regular season trophy is important, but also the pyramid system within the new playoff format. I think it's making a big difference in the competitiveness from whistle to whistle on the field.
How you feeling, Ollie?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think with that being the case, my biggest takeaway is I'm looking at which teams are kind of capable of maybe pulling away and have a bit extra in this league. And so for me, the biggest takeaway so far has been that Pacific, I think, had the best winter of any team in the CPL. And look genuinely positioned to challenge a Forge team that we all expected to be up at the top of the standings at this stage of the season. So I've been really impressed with Pacific so far. I think not just, we know what they can be at their best when they have their best 11 out. We saw that at times last season. We saw how good Manny Aparicio was for them last season, but now they're deeper. There's options available to James Merriman. He's able to rotate his side. He's going to have some real, I think, competition for places, particularly in the front three. When you look at what this man's been able to do, Ayman Salouf, Adonijah Reed coming in, Easton Ongaro still kind of finding his feet at this point, but you know that he's going to score goals for them. So I think this is a team that's taken a major step forward. And, when you talk about the parity in the league and teams struggling to separate each, one from another in a lot of draws, Pacific are the one team, I think, with obviously Forge being the defending champions, that seem to have taken that biggest step forward and look to me to be true contenders for both titles this season.
KJ stole my answer. Actually, let's say he borrowed my answer. We'll say it that way. It's the parity. And this is the most parity that we've seen in comparison to any other domestic league around the world. There have been draws in 48.28% of games played in the Canadian Premier League. That narrowly edges out the Vietnam V League at 47.14. Then it drops down to 36.25 in the Chinese Super League. These are numbers for the 2022-2023 campaign, or 2023. So it's just been crazy how many draws there's actually been. And I think KJ is right. It's about the incentive of the regular season trophy at the end of the season. I also think the standard of coaching, the managers across this league, has improved. I think it's at a very good level where each and every game, the tactical shape or approach by these managers, it alters, it changes, it provides a different wrinkle for the opposing team to kind of deal with. And I think that oftentimes that's leading to both teams kind of canceling each other out. But I think that it's some top coaching, and the fact that there is parity makes each and every game week across the Canadian Premier League that much more watchable, because we simply don't know how it's going to play out.
Do you have any more Vietnam V League tidbits?
Oh my God, you just
from your
stole
research?
my joke. That was what I was going with.
It's just all in the numbers, Ollie. Just all in the numbers. I can go down the Iranian Pro League at 35.83.
No, okay.
The Colombia Primera A 35.1. I can go down the list if you want me to.
No,
the most draws. We're number one.
Everyone's just stealing everything from everyone. So you know what? I'm going to say it first. The biggest surprise, York region. Anyone from there? York United. That's my question. Sitting second in the standing. What is up with that? Pretty impressive if you're from the York region area. Obviously, you love that. But KJ, what has been your biggest surprise so far?
I'm going to go with the international signings. And I look at a lot of these players. I was fortunate enough to talk to a lot of them before they kicked the ball in the CPL. But I'll be honest, many of us didn't see these guys play. But when you think about some of the best players in the CPL this year, it's been the international signings. Ollie talked a little bit about Ayman Salufi. You could make the case has been the best player so far through 2 months of the CPL. Pacific Nyongabire in Winnipeg has been tremendous. You think of Bakri and Pele Martinez at the back for Vancouver. Asama Alou and Samaro, who scored the screamer. Caligari has been a major influence in Halifax. I mean, I'm missing others, I'm sure, but the international signings coming in, I think, have taken this league to another level. It's not always been the case. Some international signings in the past, many of them have got them wrong. But this year so far, I think the bulk of them have been really, really good, and they're raising the quality of the CPL.
Mm-hmm. Ollie, anything else you want to steal from somebody?
Well, my biggest surprise is actually the answer that KJ and Wheels gave a moment ago, which is the league. There's loads of parity in the league, and it's really unpredictable.
Stop it! Stop it!
But just the extent of it, right? Like I think we all knew that there's a lot of parity in the CPL in terms of talent, and that some teams were going to be close to each other. But it's just so back and forth. Like York are suddenly second in the league; they're on a 3-game winning streak. Ottawa won 5-0 away from home 2 weeks ago, and now they're bottom, and players are writing apology tweets. Like it's just so topsy-turvy from week to week what kind of outcomes you're going to get, that it's difficult to predict. So I like I said, I expected a degree of parity, but I think to this extent, it's been a real surprise.
Yeah. Andy, I'm going to borrow from you this time or steal. I don't know. It's York United. They're the biggest surprise of the season. Look, like I was kind of bullish that they were going to struggle this season when they lost so many important players at the back. Zator, Ensa, Wilson. I just thought that was too big of a gap to overcome in terms of what they needed to provide defensively. But Paris G's been great. Mordekudis has stepped right in. He's been very good. All of a sudden, they look down and out. They spend a week in Halifax. There needs to be a Canadian Premier League documentary. What exactly happened in Halifax after they got smashed on the West Coast the week before? Because now they've rolled off 3 straight victories, and they look like the real deal. They look like a team that finally has some balance about them. They certainly have an attacking threat. I don't think that was ever going to be in question. And now they find themselves level with Pacific on points. It's just been a crazy turnaround that's happened so quickly over a matter of 2.5 weeks. And the thing is, as they continue to get a little bit more healthy, I think that they can actually be a better version of what they are right now. And I certainly didn't see that coming.
Di Rosario and Wright haven't scored yet either.
That's what I was going to say. Neither one of their two, main prolific number 9s haven't scored a goal, and they're still in second place. Crazy.
Well, and what's crazy is, I know, KJ, we were mentioning this before we went to air, and you guys have been talking about parity and the amount of draws in this league. They have 4 wins and 4 losses. They're the only ones who don't have a draw. But either way, I mean, this is a team that's kind of making us do a double take, that's for sure. Let's talk about individual performances, and Ollie, I'll come to you with this one first. Who do you think is so far at the quarter point of the season had the best individual performance?
Well, I have picked players for this, and I've gone with 3 players, so I'm taking liberties slightly there. But there's 3 I want to highlight.
Borrow
in
again.
I may be borrowing from other people, but I want to highlight these 3 in particular because I think the way the game is going all over the world nowadays, you don't see so many players like this and I think coaching is part of it. A lot of coaches are trying to take chaos and risks out of the game now. They want it to be very controlled. They don't like one-on-one individual duels and battles and that type of thing because it just creates moments that, can lead to randomness, I guess. And there's 3 players in the league that I just think are brilliant to watch every week and thrive in those kinds of moments. And it's Pacific Nyongabire, Ali Musi, and Ayman Salouf. They've been 3 of my favorite players to watch in the league this season. Nyongabire has already, I think it's 84 dribbles he's attempted this season. That would already be 7th in the league for the entire 2022 season. He's going to take whatever the league record all time is for that easily. But all 3 of them as well have end products at the end of it. 3 of the league leaders in terms of goals and assists so far this season. You would expect them to be up there at the end of the season. I think any one of them could be a candidate to win the Player of the Year awards. They're players that are fun to watch. They're real mavericks, but they're also producing at the end of it and absolutely integral to their teams. They wouldn't be where they are without them this season. So 3 for me that have stood out.
All right, KJ.
Yeah, all great picks. Like Ollie, I think they all deserve. Like I put out my top 10 rankings, and they'll be all in it, in different ways. I love Ali Musi. I think he's been tremendous this season. So I'll take another direction. I mean, I don't want to steal Wheels' answer. So
go for it.
What about Sean Young from Pacific? Because this is a player that last season I thought played on a team that really struggled in midfield. And Ollie's talked to it and hit the nail on the head. They've got so much depth there. Cedric Toussaint's been fantastic. They brought in Yates when Toussaint got a rest last week. That's how much depth they've got. They've got Aparicio and they've got Young. And Sean Young now has added that thing that he needed to do, that end product in the final third. With key goals and key assists. He's been a leader. He's captained the team in a game as well, which is a tremendous story for Canadian football to have a Victoria boy captaining his team. And I think he's growing very, very quickly. It looks very mature and assured. And yes, he gets the headlines because what he does in the final third. But I think right now, his recoveries as well and his ability to play in that 8 is taking Pacific to another level. It looks like a fun team to play on, and he's thriving in it.
Yeah. Young wins my bronze medal. My silver medal goes to Nyongabere. I think that no player demands as much focus and attention defensively as Nyongabere on Valor. But my standout player is Lorenzo Caligari. No player's completed more passes in the Canadian Premier League. He's only played 6 games. And the one game that he was taken out of the Halifax side, they were torn apart by York. He's the glue that keeps this entire team together. Just his vision, his composure, his positioning, it's all top notch. So we might as well give a shout out to another pure number 6 in this league, someone that can hold and dictate the game from a deep lying position. And I think that as long as he remains fit and on the field, Halifax is going to remain a very competitive side. I've been very impressed by what he's brought to the table.
By the way, I prefer to just think that great minds think alike. How about that? We're just going to go with that, and then let's continue stealing. Let's just continue stealing from one another. KJ, before we let you go, I do have one more. So, we're just 25% of the way into the season. We've discussed already things that have stood out to us. But what are some questions that you still have? What are just some things that are still unanswered, perhaps, that you want to see the rest of the way?
Well, I'm going to go to the nation's capital and Mr. Carlos Gonzalez, who I'm not sure how much sleep he's getting right now, who was the coach of the year last year for a reason and took Atletico Ottawa from worst to first and did not expect that journey to go from worst to first to worst. But they're bottom of the league right now. And I think they're the worst team right now. This is not by accident. This is not unfortunate. They've not been unlucky. They have been the worst team, and the standings reflect that. Now, do many people still think they will get in the playoffs? Yes. But I think the questions are there to wonder when and if can they turn this around. And the biggest concern I think he has is home form. Away from home, they're fine. They can tear teams apart and transition. Their fluidity, their directness, like we saw in the Cup against Halifax, the goal against Verhoeven scored against Vancouver. They are one of the best transition teams. But at home, teams come in and say, can you break us down? We don't think you can. And since Carlos Gonzalez has been there, they've played 18 league home games, none in the playoffs, not including playoffs. And they've only scored more than 1 goal 4 times out of 18. It's not good enough. And they know that, and then they've got Salter now up front. They've got Shaw. They keep flip-flopping. They played them together once. They're searching for answers right now. And there's a lot more questions at the moment, particularly in attack for that team.
Ollie?
Well, similarly, I'll go one place above them in the table. I still don't really know what to make of how the Halifax Wanderers this season and what they are going to be. Clearly a different style of play, some different ideas being implemented. That takes time. And I think there's been good and bad. I thought against Pacific at the weekends that they were pretty good, albeit against a Pacific team that I think was clearly feeling the effects of that midweek cup game. This Forge game, again, a decent performance, some really good moments for them where they're playing a kind of quality of football that we haven't necessarily seen a lot of in Halifax over the past couple of years. But there's been some pretty ugly moments as well. Obviously, the York United defeat stands out. Moments where it feels like, to me, players are maybe in situations they're not all that comfortable with. Defensively, I think at times that they've been a little bit soft as well. So those are 2, very real questions, I think, is in terms of what the potential of this side is. I think we're all expecting they play nice football, they have good ideas, that this is going to come good. I think it's still a bit of a question mark, especially when you look at the teams they're competing with. They're good teams. Valor, Cavalry, York United's starting to improve. It's going to be tough to get in that top 5, I think, this season. So I'm really interested to see which direction this team goes in, and I think it could go either way.
I'm happy to say we all have a different answer for this one. I wrote down, can Valor take the next step and become a complete team? Look, Valor's never made the playoffs in the Canadian Premier League. There's a lot of pressure to produce this year on Phil DeSantos, and I like what I've seen so far. I think that they're progressing in terms of their style of play. I think their midfield is deep and very good. They managed their way through a very difficult crisis with cluster injuries across their defensive back line. It's been crazy how many injuries they've had. Andrew Jean-Baptiste has not even played a game yet they remain competitive. So I have questions about what that back line looks like and whether it can stay healthy enough for this team to remain ultimately competitive. I think they have a great goalkeeper in Rayan Yesley. My pick preseason to win goalkeeper of the year. I still like that one. And is there enough goals in this team up top? Like Diongabere, Williams, like they've come into this league and they've hit the ground running. A lot of pressure on Novak, and maybe there's a lack of depth right there in terms of goals in this team. If they can address those two areas, solidifying things across their back line, getting healthy, and maybe bringing in another player over the course of the season that can maybe solve some of those issues up front, I think they can finally make the playoffs. But I still think it's a bit of a work in progress, trending in the right direction. But I want to see how this comes together, because every year they find a way to capitulate in the end. And this season, that simply cannot happen. So I'm really curious how this is going to continue to build.
All right, there you go. Analyzing the first quarter of the season. Much more to go. Anything can happen in a league with parity. That's why we watch, KJ. We appreciate you taking the time here. And,
Thank you, guys.
just sharing thoughts and sharing ideas
yes.
and sharing answers. That's what we do here. We share.